On June 6, 2015, at approximately 5:30 a.m., correctional officers at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, conducted standard morning count. Cell 23 in Honor Block A registered 2 occupants. Cell 24 in Honor Block A registered 2 occupants. Protocol satisfied, except both cells were empty. What the officers discovered instead were crude mannequins constructed from sweatshirt fabric, positioned under blankets to simulate sleeping inmates. The 2 men who should have occupied those cells, Richard Matt and David Sweat, had already been gone for 7 hours. Richard Matt was serving 25 years to life for a 1997 violent felony conviction involving his former employer. David Sweat was serving life without parole for a 2002 incident involving Broome County Sheriff's Deputy Kevin Tarsia. These were not opportunistic offenders. These were calculated individuals with decades of incarceration experience and absolutely zero incentive to comply with institutional authority. Clinton Correctional Facility was commissioned in 1845. The infrastructure reflected that age. Original stone walls. Cast iron steam pipes dating back to the early 1900s. Maintenance tunnels that snaked beneath the cell blocks, designed for access to antiquated heating systems. The facility housed approximately 2,600 inmates across multiple security tiers. Honor Block, where Matt and Sweat resided, was reserved for inmates demonstrating sustained compliance. The irony of that classification would become evident. Here's what investigators would later reconstruct. Beginning in January 2015, David Sweat, who worked in the prison tailor shop, began systematically acquiring tools. Not improvised weapons. Actual industrial equipment. Hacksaw blades. A punch set designed for metalwork. These items were smuggled into Honor Block over a period of weeks. The method of acquisition involved Joyce Mitchell, a civilian supervisor in the tailor shop, and Gene Palmer, a veteran correctional officer with 27 years of service. Mitchell's involvement was extensively documented. She had developed what institutional reports classified as an inappropriate relationship with both inmates, though the nature and extent remained disputed. What was not disputed was her role in smuggling contraband. Hacksaw blades were hidden inside frozen ground meat she provided to Palmer. Palmer, believing the meat was simply a favor for inmates he considered compliant, delivered the packages to their cells. He later claimed he had no knowledge of the tools concealed within. Federal investigators found that claim inconsistent with the totality of evidence, but Palmer maintained it until his conviction. The escape itself was an engineering problem. Both inmates occupied cells with rear walls that connected to a maintenance catwalk. These walls were constructed from 2 layers of steel sheeting with a hollow cavity between them. It's 11:47 p.m. Sweat positions the hacksaw blade against the inner steel layer. The first stroke produces a high-frequency vibration that travels through the wall structure. He pauses, listens. The steam system hisses at irregular intervals, masking the metallic scrape. He continues. Each cut requires approximately 400 strokes to penetrate 1/8-inch steel. He's making the 6th cut of the night. The process has been ongoing for 5 months. The cuts form a rectangular outline, 2 feet wide by 3 feet tall. Enough clearance for a human body. The final section of steel separates. Sweat removes the panel and sets it aside. The hollow cavity behind is dark. He grips the tied bed sheets and lowers himself through the opening. 20 feet of vertical descent. His hands register the friction burns through the fabric. He reaches the catwalk. Matt follows the same route. Both men are now outside their cells. No alarm is triggered. Investigators would later document this sequence through recovered tool marks and fiber evidence. The acoustic signature generated during those 5 months should have been detectable. Yet Honor Block experienced no disciplinary reports related to unusual sounds during the preparation period. 2 factors provided cover. First, the ambient noise from the aging steam heating system operated at 65 to 70 decibels. Second, the cuts were executed during evening hours when officer presence was reduced and inmate movement created additional background noise. From the catwalk, they accessed a steam pipe tunnel. The tunnel was 6 feet in diameter and stretched beneath the entire facility. It was not monitored. It was not alarmed. It existed as legacy infrastructure, largely forgotten by modern security protocols. The tunnel led them to a junction point where multiple pipes converged. Here, they encountered a problem. A brick wall, 2 feet thick, blocked direct access to the next section of tunnel that would lead them toward the perimeter. Sweat used a sledgehammer, which had also been smuggled into the cell, to create a breach. The noise from this operation should have been detectable. The wall was breached over multiple sessions. No alarms triggered. No officers investigated. The disciplinary record showed 0 incident reports filed in the relevant time frame. Beyond the brick wall, they navigated a series of turns within the tunnel network until they reached a point directly beneath Barker Street, a public road that ran parallel to the prison's northern perimeter wall. At this location, they encountered a cast iron steam pipe, approximately 24 inches in diameter. Sweat cut through the pipe using the same hacksaw technique employed on the cell wall. Once through the pipe, they accessed a smaller tunnel that angled upward toward a manhole cover on Barker Street. It's 11:30 p.m. on June 5th. Sweat positions himself directly beneath the manhole cover. 300 pounds of cast iron sits 18 inches above his head. The locking ring mechanism is corroded, but functional. He applies rotational force. The mechanism resists. He adjusts grip angle and applies sustained pressure. The lock disengages. He pushes upward. The cover shifts 2 inches. Cool night air enters the tunnel. He pushes again. The cover pivots on its axis and slides aside. Barker Street is empty. No vehicle traffic. No pedestrian movement. Sweat emerges first, scanning the residential area. Matt follows. They're standing on a public road. The prison is 200 yards behind them. No security presence. No alarm system extending beyond the perimeter wall. Sweat reaches back into the tunnel and places a handwritten note where investigators will find it during the forensic sweep. The note reads, "Have a nice day." The message was calculated, not spontaneous, not emotional. It was a statement of technical superiority placed at the exact point where the institution's containment architecture had failed. At 11:32 p.m., both men walked west into the Adirondack wilderness. Joyce Mitchell was supposed to be waiting in a vehicle on Barker Street. The plan, as later described to investigators, involved her driving the men several hours south to a predetermined location where they would separate and proceed independently. She did not show. Her explanation was that she experienced a panic attack and could not follow through. Some analysts question this narrative, suggesting she may have been intercepted or discouraged by law enforcement already monitoring her behavior. No evidence supports pre-escape surveillance, but the timing remains inconsistent with their established pattern of compliance with the inmates' directives. Without transportation, Matt and Sweat proceeded on foot. They moved west into the Adirondack wilderness, a region of dense forest, minimal road infrastructure, and extremely low population density. The terrain provided concealment, but also presented survival challenges. June temperatures in that region range from 40 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Both men were wearing prison-issued clothing. They had no food supplies beyond what could be foraged or stolen from seasonal hunting cabins scattered throughout the forest. The search operation became the largest manhunt in New York State history. Over 1,300 law enforcement personnel were deployed. U.S. Marshals, FBI Hostage Rescue Team, New York State Police, Forest Rangers, Border Patrol, given the proximity to the Canadian border, approximately 25 miles north, Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging systems conducted grid searches. K-9 units tracked scent trails. Roadblocks were established on every major route within a 50-mile radius. For 23 days, they remained undetected. This duration is significant. The average fugitive apprehension time for escaped violent offenders in wilderness environments is 72 hours. Matt and Sweat exceeded that metric by a factor of 7. Analysis of their movement pattern, reconstructed from cabin break-ins and recovered items, showed they traveled approximately 30 miles northwest from the prison, moving parallel to Route 374, but maintaining concealment within the forest. On June 26th, a customs agent named Chris Voss was driving on Route 11 near the town of Malone when he observed a man walking along the road who matched the description of Richard Matt. Voss radioed for backup. A tactical team responded within minutes. They located Matt in a wooded area approximately 1 mile from the road. Officers issued verbal commands. Matt did not comply. He was holding what officers described as a 20-gauge shotgun, stolen from one of the cabins. The engagement lasted approximately 30 seconds. Matt was struck multiple times. He expired at the scene. Ballistic analysis confirmed 3 hits to center mass. David Sweat was apprehended 2 days later on June 28th, approximately 2 miles south of the Canadian border. He was spotted by Sergeant Jay Cook of the New York State Police, who was conducting a solo patrol near the town of Constable. Cook observed Sweat running across an open field. Cook exited his vehicle and pursued on foot. He issued commands to stop. Sweat continued toward a tree line. Cook fired twice. 1 round struck Sweat in the torso. He survived and was transported to Albany Medical Center under armed guard. The post-incident investigation revealed systemic failures. Gene Palmer was convicted of promoting prison contraband and official misconduct. He served 5 months in county jail. Joyce Mitchell pleaded guilty to first-degree promoting prison contraband and fourth-degree criminal facilitation. She received a sentence of up to 7 years and served approximately 6 before parole. Her psychological evaluation described a pattern of boundary violations and susceptibility to manipulation, but also noted no prior criminal history. The full context of Matt and Sweat's index convictions became relevant during the manhunt threat assessment. Matt's 1997 conviction involved the kidnapping and dismemberment of his former employer, William Rickerson, in North Tonawanda. Sweat's 2002 conviction stemmed from the shooting death of Deputy Kevin Tarsia during a 4th of July traffic stop in Kirkwood, an incident involving 17 gunshot wounds. Both men had demonstrated capacity for extreme violence under pressure. Law enforcement agencies coordinating the search operated under the assumption that any confrontation would likely be lethal. David Sweat provided a detailed debriefing to investigators. He described the planning process, the tool acquisition, the acoustic calculations they performed to determine optimal cutting times when steam system noise would provide maximum cover. He confirmed that Matt handled most of the social engineering with Mitchell, while Sweat performed the majority of the physical cutting and breaching work. He stated their original target was the Canadian border, where they believed they could disappear into the rural townships of Quebec. Security modifications were implemented across New York's correctional system following the escape. Random cell searches increased by 40%. Tool control protocols were revised. Maintenance tunnels were mapped using ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning to identify additional vulnerabilities. Honor Block's rear wall access points were reinforced with welded steel plates and motion sensors. The estimated cost of these systemic upgrades exceeded $15 million. Here's the technical question that remains unresolved. How did 2 inmates, working with hand tools inside an active maximum security facility, execute a 5-month construction project involving metal cutting, brick demolition, and pipe breaching without triggering a single security alert? The acoustic signature alone should have been detectable. Modern facilities employ seismic sensors that register vibration patterns consistent with cutting or drilling. Clinton Correctional had no such systems in 2015, but human officers conducting rounds should have noted inconsistencies. The investigative review found no evidence of deliberate complicity beyond Palmer and Mitchell, yet the statistical probability of that duration of undetected activity approaches zero under normal monitoring conditions. Some analysts have proposed what they term the normalization paradox. In institutions where baseline noise and routine non-compliance are constant, anomalous signals can be filtered out by observer fatigue. Officers expect a certain level of low-grade rule violation. They adapt. The truly dangerous activity hides within that adapted baseline. It's not that the system failed to detect. It's that the system had been conditioned to ignore. Richard Matt's remains were processed according to standard protocol. David Sweat was returned to Clinton Correctional Facility, placed in solitary confinement, and later transferred to 5 Points Correctional Facility in Romulus, New York, where he remains under special management status. He will never be eligible for parole. He spends 23 hours per day in a cell with no rear wall access, no tool privileges, and continuous video monitoring. The manhole cover on Barker Street was replaced and welded shut. The tunnel access points were filled with concrete. The note they left was photographed and filed as evidence. It still exists in a case file somewhere in Albany. Have a nice day. A message that cost the state millions in response resources, ended one life, extended another's incarceration into perpetual isolation, and exposed a critical vulnerability in a system that had operated on the assumption that stone walls and iron bars were sufficient. The question isn't how they escaped. We know how. The question is how an institution designed to contain the most dangerous offenders in the state failed to detect a multi-month engineering project executed with smuggled industrial tools inside its most secure housing unit. That question has procedural answers, policy changes, equipment upgrades, personnel training. But the operational reality remains. For 150 days, 2 men cut through steel, smashed through brick, and breached cast iron pipe, and not a single alarm sounded. That's not a system failure. That's a system that had stopped listening.